Hi, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and hanging out with me this evening. This is Getting Familiar, and I am Lady Stars and Fire. Now, each week, pretty much here on the show, I typically pick out a few animals that would go along with whatever the discussion is also about. And we kind of go into a little bit of animal medicine, some healing that can come from that animal medicine, spiritual information like from a spirit guide of that animal, or even some of the power you may receive being a power animal for you. I typically always say on this show, we deal with anything spiritual and animal related. But for some reason, Spirit was guiding me on this specific show that I needed to go over something more direct. Stay with just the animal medicine instead of adding an additional category, at least for this show. I seem to keep hearing that poem, Snips and Snails, and Puppy Dog Tales. That's what little boys are made of. Sugar and spice and everything nice. That's what little girls are made of. I don't know. Maybe this is a show a little bit more for the guys out there. Or maybe it's a little bit more of our darker or creepier side. Or maybe it's just more about that masculine energy. But I'm calling this one the darker, creepier side. You see, for me, when I say animal wisdom, animal medicine in general, I am considering all of animal kind, so to speak. Not only mammals, or that lives within the water, but anything that is a living so-called animal, including insects. And the insects is why I am calling this one the darker, creepier side. Because let's face it, the insects have just a creepy way to them often. We don't really get that warm, fuzzy feeling like we do for the furry animals. But with insects, we are often more set off. Kind of like, ew, I don't really want anything to do with that. And therefore, we don't ever pay any attention to that medicine that could be coming from them, which can be very wise and important information. But we're stuck in that, no, I don't want nothing, ew. So we don't pay attention. And therefore, obviously, we miss that medicine. But I have been being guided to insect after insect after insect, gross or not, freaking me out or not. And so therefore I know I have to make this show. See, now for me personally, I know that anytime I see an out of the ordinary animal, so to speak, pop up into my life, I know to stop for a second and view it from what might be the spiritual aspect. But no, that does not always mean that just because an odd animal popped up, there is a spiritual aspect there. Sometimes, let's face it, we're just jumping for answers. However, if you do find the animal medicine does fit what is going on in your life in some way, then obviously it was medicine being given to you. But the reason I'm saying this is because, like I said, this is the darker, creepier side of the animals. And I was reminded one time by a friend of mine who happens to be a pagan priest, never shun the animals, especially if you're the animal lady. And what I mean by that is simply the fact he knows that I happen to have all kinds of animals come to me in my physical life all the time. Really odd, weird animals out of nowhere. Or that they come and live at the sanctuary, which for me is like my outdoor, personal, sacred place, my sacred space. Maybe like a church, so to speak, but just for me. And because of my special little connection that I happen to have with animals, my friend, that pagan priest, reminded me, never, never, never shun your animals. Even if they're ones you're not very keen on or lovable about. Those animals are there with you spiritually for a reason. And what got through my head, the thickest part of what got through my head when we had this conversation was just because they're not the furry, lovable animals that I love. They're a little bit more creepy or insect-ish. A little bit more, don't really want to have anything much to do with that. Doesn't mean anything to the fact of the spiritual nature. And if I'm shunning it, then I'm disrespecting it when it brings its medicine. And the biggest key of what he was telling me is the outside of my sanctuary, which is my sacred space. And this may be important to you, because whatever it is that is your sacred space in your life, that happens to do with your spirituality, for where it is you may possibly connect best, for your rituals and connection with spirit itself. My friend, this pagan priest, reminded me, outside of my sanctuary, outside of my sacred space, that is my place, such as my garden and the outside of the sanctuary itself. That's free for me to decorate, keep clean, cut the grass, plant my plants, decorate how I wish. But once I enter that sanctuary, being I am all about the animals in general, that once I enter that sanctuary is no longer mine and only mine to take care of, because that is actually my connection with spirit. And if they are in that area, in that place, then they belong to the creator, to the goddess, to the universe. However you want to put it, they belong there for a reason. Now, this conversation that I was having, again, with this pagan priest, took place because of the simple fact it's an outside area, open to all elements. It has no closed doors. Therefore, the animals come and go as they please. I have cats that live in there from time to time, raccoons. I have skunks that come through and live there too. I've even had a deer I've seen coming through the sanctuary before. And to me, those are all the bigger animals, the ones that I typically look after and love. But the smaller animals is what he was getting at, because I was removing spider webs. And this conversation was taking place because I was discussing with him, I don't want to be a mama of a million spiders. As I was seeing on the outside of my sanctuary, I had spider webs going into the trees and into the sanctuary itself, or the outside of the sanctuary itself, with spider eggs in it. Now, I have no ill will with spiders. I don't overly love them. I've gotten to where I accept them, and I am happy and thankful when I have medicine from them. However, I don't want to be a mom to millions of spiders because I'm finding spider eggs on the porch of the sanctuary. So we were discussing, how can I solve this problem without actually shunning the animal itself? When we came to realize none of these spider webs were taking place inside of the sanctuary. They were only taking place on the outside of the sanctuary. So it was completely acceptable to take the webs and the eggs and burn them so I would not have this problem before they hatched and invaded the yard and the sanctuary itself. But on the inside, I wasn't having the problem. I was finding a few spider webs, but not really any eggs. And yes, I still remove the spider webs simply because I'm in there. I've got to walk through there. The other animals walk through there. I don't want to be walking into a spider web and start to become a kung fu master. Because let's face it, anytime any of us manages to walk through a spider web, to get caught in a spider web, we somehow become a karate master and karate chop our way out. But my entire thought process was, I don't want to shun the spiders, because obviously they belong to the goddess, really, whether they are on the inside or the outside of the sanctuary. But what my friend, that pagan priest, was trying to remind me of is, yes, obviously, they belong to Mother Earth. They belong to the goddess and the creator. Whatever it is you want to see it as, that is that divining of energy like God, so to speak. All animals, period, all animals belong to that energy. Whatever it is in truth that energy is. Yes, all the animals, period, always belong to and with that energy, just as we do. But the thing is, once they have entered that sanctuary, it needs to be looked at a different sacred level. More like once they're in that sanctuary, they are protected now by the goddess, by the universe, the creator, God, whatever it is you want to see it as. But inside of that sanctuary, I should be viewing them as being protected by that energy. Just as for myself, even, as this is where I have my sacred energy with spirit and the divine. And therefore, being it is that sacred space, all also should be protected within it. Meaning, yes, go ahead and clean the sanctuary and keep it clean and take care of it. But do not harm anything that is in there either. As this could be seen as shunning those animals and the messages being brought to you, or simply being protected by being there by the goddess itself. That I should be viewing it as it is sacred. It should be above just my will. Now, let's face it, that took some time for me to get in my head, wrap my head around it, and comprehend that kind of information. Not because there is a higher spirit out there, or because there is a divine energy that is with it, or that there is divine will, period. But what can be hard to understand and wrap our head around is that the divine is everywhere. But when it's in a sacred place, that may also be our own place. And the hardest part of getting that was the simple fact, my will is not the highest, most important will here to be seen, but that the sacred and divine will is always above ours. Even within our own little lives, we tend to overlook this often. We don't mean to. We never mean to shun spirit, but we do. And realizing that there is a higher purpose going on around us other than just us, that can be hard for us to grasp sometimes. But to make a long story short, a friend of mine who happens to also be a shaman sent me a spider amulet, which I have hanging in the sanctuary. And after that point, I haven't had any more spider issues in the sanctuary. I only see spider webs in the four corners from time to time, but I never see anything else, nor do I see the spiders themselves. But by placing the amulet in the sanctuary was showing respect for them. Even though I don't necessarily want them moving in there, I was showing respect to them, and therefore it seems I haven't had a problem since. I respect and I understand the medicine that comes from the spider. I just don't necessarily want to be invaded by the spider. And I figure since I was telling you about my spider story and the spider eggs and sanctuary, the first animal we should speak about, obviously, should be the spider. And some of those symbolisms associated with the spider is limitlessness, progressive, feminine, circular energy, manipulation of thoughts or cunning, death and rebirth, resourcefulness, creation, protection, fate, resurrection, infinity, and construction. But see, just hearing some of the symbolisms, that association with the spider to my sanctuary makes a lot of sense. As it's like my sacred space, my sacred area of like a church, so to speak. My connection with the divine energy. With just hearing the symbolisms, that association with the spider as to that spiritual energy, it makes perfect sense why spider would be hanging out at the sanctuary with me, don't it? At at least some of those symbolisms. It is said that if the spider has woven its way into your life, the spider can be bringing attention to your level of creativity. Are you ignoring your ideas within this creativity? Or more so, are you at a peaking point? Are you properly taking the time to balance between your past and your soon-to-be future? That these are messages at this time you may need to be focusing on. Ultimately, the spider could be asking you, are you weaving the web of your life that you wish it to be? Because the reality you see before you was created by you. And therefore, if you do not like what it is you see, then it is time for you to change it. Another way of looking at it is very simple. Cast your dreams into the mystical dream. And just like the spider, become the weaver of the web. Borrow its medicine and weave the web you wish to create. The spider reminds you to look beyond your fears, to see her dancing within her web, within the wind, spinning her will. For she is a dream weaver, casting her spell for all to see, as she creates what it is she wills to be. The spider is not evil, it is not dark, and it does not carry ill will. However, it does tend to fall into those lines of those creepy things we typically choose to overlook. She is an enchantress of creativity and artistic expression, but she infuses her dream into her web with all her needs and her desires. For she is the original dream catcher. She created the spell of the dream catcher within the web she spins. With her full display of belief, she binds her web, her spell, to the limbs, the bushes, the trees, and places them on display for all to see. For the very height of her magic comes in glimmering displays from the sun or the moon, caught upon the wind, within the mist or the morning dew. She expresses her very existence within all of this to you, because the spider does bring creativity and manifestation. She teaches us how to actually work our spell crafting or dream weaving into manifestation of our reality by reminding us determination and believing in it can make it possible. But right at the moment, we have to take a few minutes for our sponsors, and we'll be right back with Spider, along with some more of those darker, creepier things. Hey everyone, it's Lady Stars and Fire here. So come on over to the website today and check it out with all of my personal, handcrafted, metaphysical, and magical items, for I created them just for you. You may want to check in with the free weekly healing messages or get your own readings, tarot, ruin, even combination, astrology as well. You may find yourself interested in the monthly Cosmos itineraries or even a Reiki healing session. So come on over today to our magical sanctuary and see what we have in store for you. Visit the website at ladystarsandfire.com. And as always, take good care of you and use you wisely. And hugs and kisses in the wind, my darlings. This is Lady Stars and Fire, signing off. Okay, everybody, we are back, and this is Getting Familiar, and I am Lady Stars and Fire. Thank you for hanging out with me this evening. But if you're just tuning in, I've been calling this show the darker, creepier side of things, because we're discussing the insect world, or those bugs and stuff that we typically really don't want much to do with. We don't mean to shun them, but often we do. Therefore, often also shunning that very medicine that might be coming from those animals. Overlooking it, not exactly viewing it as having important information for us. But I also want to remind everyone, we also have our YouTube channel here for PBN Radio that houses all of our shows. Kind of like our show library, where you can go back and catch, or maybe just re-listen to any of the shows that have ever been played on PBN Radio. So you have a second chance to catch any of them if you missed them, or just want to be reminded of something you heard within one of them. So I just wanted to throw that reminder out there that we do have our YouTube channel for PBN Radio for those past shows. But again, today we were discussing what I'm calling that darker, creepier side, dealing with those bugs, those animals and insects that we kind of choose to overlook. And before we took our break, we were discussing the spider and how she's really not a dark or an evil being, but actually, quite the contrary, she's much different. She's more about creativity, but to create our life as it is that we truly want it, to spin the web of our life correctly, and that if we don't like what we see, to change it. That the spider is the original dream catcher. For the spider will cast her web to her very desires, and then, ever so slowly, she awaits patiently on the side, as she waits for her blessings and her sustenance to simply land within the web that she has spent. For once she knows, once that blessing has landed, she must pounce so that she can enjoy the fruit of her labor. Because for the spider, the fruit of her labor is her meal. This is the spider's dream, for dinner to be served. She teaches us to infuse our web with that same kind of energy when we create our own web within our life. To spin our own web with intention and expectation. To borrow her totem medicine in such a way. Because her true power is just this, that magic within her intention, weaving into action for that expectation to come true, weaving it into reality. Because she reminds us the power of believing within the very web it is that she spins. She reminds us to believe in the dream. And she creates her web to be so beautiful that it surely has to get the attention of the nature spirits. The spider is reminding us to put our dreams on display, if nothing but for our own selves to see. Maybe place such a dream catcher itself near a window to remind yourself of the power of manifestation and her guidance for the spider's wisdom within the web, reminding us or maybe teaching us of her creativity, as it is a powerful reinforcement to remind us to summon our own creativity and allow the enchanting spider to give us inspiration to weave our goals and our projects into our reality. But spider also teaches us of balance, the balance of all things, physical and spiritual, male, female, past, and future, as she is both strength and gentleness. She reminds us that our past is always interwoven within our future, that her body itself is shaped with the letter 8, as well as she has 8 legs, symbolic of infinite possibilities and creation. And it is thought those 8 legs represent the 4 winds of change and the 4 directions within the medicine wheel. You see, the spider's message is, you are an infinite being who will continue to weave patterns into life as you are living throughout your time. So do not fail to see that external plan of creation itself or your very own creations. For you are never ending, creating outwardly as well. And therefore, those who deal with the written word or a form of written spell casting often will find that the spider will be close by as a totem, a power animal, or a guide. It is also said that to be bitten by a spider is a warning to pay attention to your thoughts or your feelings, and that the spider is letting you know your thoughts and your feelings are manifesting into your reality. And again, reminding you, if you are currently unhappy with your reality, then it's time to make changes. As well as we are reminded that all too often we sabotage ourselves and our very future we are trying to create with blame, anger, criticism, and even hatred. And that occasionally we are brought to a stage within our life that in order to manifest massive spiritual growth within ourselves, that spider or spider bite, to stay or keep yourself directed toward your purpose, that the transcending of yourself into your authentic self is needed. So if you can, and a spider has bitten you, it is important to pay attention to what you was thinking or feeling at that time. For it may be helpful in helping you to realize or analyze what it is that you are attracting into your life, people, events, or even situations to yourself. And that possibly all of these reasons may be part of the delaying or derailing of your own spiritual development and efforts. But then again, it is also said that if within a dream you see a spider spinning its web, that you will soon be rewarded for your hard efforts. And that if you see a spider climbing up the wall, that your desires will soon be realized. Like I said in the beginning of the show, I have a lot of love for the spider, for the medicine the spider has brought to me in my life. I have respect for the spider. I have an amulet of a spider hanging in my sanctuary to show respect. However, I did not want my sanctuary to become invaded by them either. That I did not want to personally shun the spider in my own personal life. Because I know spider has very big medicine. And to disrespect that medicine is just ignorance. Another one of those dark, creepy, crawly animals. Those nasty buggers that you never want to see. Maggots. So many stories out there, movies, always give the idea that a maggot brings with it evil, because it is typically seen as representing death or eating death and decaying. To the typical eye, there is absolutely nothing comforting or cozy about seeing a maggot. In reality, in journeying, or in meditation, I'm sorry, a maggot just makes you want to quiver, and they multiply like rabbits, or even faster than rabbits. They simply turn your stomach in all ill bad ways. But they, like the vulture, eat the dead in a very disgusting way. They clean up and they transform the decaying or the dead because they eat it. They swallow it, just like the vulture or the buzzard, whichever it is that you may call it. But that's exactly what it is. A maggot is eating away at what is decaying or already dead until there is nothing left. And as disgusting or unsettling as it may be, that is exactly what it is. It is transformation happening. But unlike the vulture or the buzzard, The maggot also brings abundance because of how they rapidly multiply. You see, the maggot itself is a symbolism of rebirth, change, and abundance. And it typically does not come in one of those symbolisms and not the other. It typically comes because of that rapid movement, that rapid growth of the maggots. Its medicine is usually of all three: that rebirth, that change, and abundance coming at you extremely fast within your life, as well as the warning of it's coming from something that you are letting go of, something that is dead, something that is decay or destruction within your life. And that as this change happens, this transformation happens, that new abundance, that new rebirth is coming into your life very quickly and possibly very overwhelmingly. It is that warning coming at you in advance that, like it or not, this change is happening and it's happening now. Hey, like I said, this may be considered that guy's show. Snips and snails and puppy dog tails. That's what little boys are made of. I told you I knew when I started to create this show I was going to be coming into some stomach turning spots, because typically we think of those disgusting animals, so to speak, that we want nothing to do with. We typically think of the men or boys and their masculine curiosity and action type of energy. And that is exactly what I'm going at. A maggot is exactly that. It comes from our darker aspects, our darker views within our life. Essentially, our darker side, or even our hidden ego, shadow. And that's exactly why maggot plays into this show right now. But I am reminded by Spirit to look at it from the ideal of the planet Pluto, working with the planet Jupiter. So let me explain it, or break it down in a whole lot of a less disgusting way of doing it. The planet Pluto is in charge of what absolutely has to happen, as it is your department within yourself of death, decay, and destruction. And Pluto disposes of the situations that somehow have gone past the point of no return, where the only solution is to let it go. But Pluto also oversees sex, reincarnation, recycling, regeneration, and rejuvenation. Pluto reminds us, without one, you cannot have the other start to take place. For Pluto is often viewed as an intense circumstance where a lesson needs to be taught of agony and ecstasy, where turmoil and evolution meet. And Pluto teaches us, like it or not, life goes on even after tremendous loss. That there is a side of us that we know is going to reflect on these losses and try to make sense of them. And that right there is where Pluto and the maggots intertwine in a message together as one. That transformative energy from death and decay into regeneration, rejuvenation, reincarnation, and rebirth itself. Right where agony and ecstasy meet, where one ends and one begins. But we also have to look at Jupiter in this obstacle of what maggots could be bringing to us, if ever it becomes medicine that you need to receive. Because Jupiter is your department of abundance and growth. Because Jupiter expands high-spirited energy that is going to motivate you to move on, to get on with it, try new things, and to network the new. But Jupiter is also where you find yourself being excessive and wasteful, when you may be overdoing something or blowing something out of proportion. When we find ourselves speaking with Jupiter, we find ourselves saying to, always, better, or more. This is Jupiter speaking through us. And these are key words within abundance and manifestation. Because when we think of Jupiter, we think of simply making things bigger, the abundance of it, making it grow. Therefore, if maggots have appeared in your life in any way, shape, or form, one of the questions to ask yourself may be, am I still stuck in death, decay, and destruction? Or am I moving rapidly into abundance and rebirth? Am I rejuvenating or regenerating in my life in some way? Or am I still stuck abundantly in my own agony of my own death, decay, and destruction in some area within our life? Because just like Pluto, if a maggot has arrived in your life in some form, the message is, this has to happen, and it has to happen now. And it's going to be coming at you with the speed of Jupiter's energy. You see, I'll be the first one to admit, I want nothing to do with a maggot. One of them or hundreds of them. I really want nothing to do with them. They're disgusting and just ew. But that medicine there is highly important. Because one of those medicines that is coming from it is also very similar to the messages we receive from the rune Fei Wu. Again, it is similar to one of those messages that come from Fei Wu. And that is that you are being shown an important opportunity to connect with the limitless abundance and that natural flow within life. The energy, the foresight, fertility, creation, as well as destruction. So therefore, it also does carry some of that energy within Fei Wu. Not all of it, but some of it. But that it reminds us in general, even if we cannot stomach it. And heck, maybe that's the most important part, is the fact that we can't stomach it. The maggot's medicine is simply that abundance is limitless. Along with the fact, maybe if you can't stomach it, you're realizing just how much death and decay and destruction you have been holding yourself in. And that it's time to move forward, let it go, like Pluto would tell you, and surrender it over, because it's going to happen anyway. And get yourself on board with the abundance, the rejuvenation, regeneration, and rebirth that is trying to come to you. To stop fighting it, because you are ultimately bringing yourself negative by doing so. And that the best thing possibly is to understand this is absolutely going to happen now. And with Jupiter's energy backing it, it may feel very overwhelming. Okay, but it's that time again, and we need to take another few moments for our sponsors. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, this is Onyx Moon, and I'd like to invite you to Florida Pagan Gathering, Samhain 2016, Sharing the Harvest. Enjoy 5 days and 4 nights of camping, drumming, workshops, music, vendors, and more. November 2nd to November 6th, 2016, at Retreats by the Lake in beautiful Lake Wales, Florida. For the last 21 years, the FPG has hosted pagans, Wiccans, witches, heathens, and druids from all over the world. FPG is a family-friendly and inclusive event open to all people with open minds and pagan-friendly hearts. The cost of FPG includes tent camping, all events, workshops, concerts, and nightly drumming at our beautiful fire circle. RVs and campers are welcome at no additional cost, but space in the RV area is limited, so register early. This is a handicapped accessible site. Air-conditioned cabins and lodges, complete with bathrooms and showers, are available for an additional fee. This FPG, we are pleased to host well-known authors and teachers Raven and Stephanie Grimassi, Erin Leach, Drew Ann Welsh, Terry Power, and Robin McKean. Our very special event will be an evening of fire walking. Workshops hosted by our headliners and local pagan teachers, meet and greet, nightly drum circle and dancing at our fire circle, our main ritual sharing the harvest hosted by Four Winds Lodge ATC, concerts by Spiral Rhythm and Fairy Elaine Silver, and our drum circle facilitators are Kelso and Becca and friends. There will be an Inipi Sweat Lodge hosted by Grey Ghost Hawk, a kids' realm with workshops and crafts, Celtic games, the Pagan Olympics, kids trick or treat, and if you like, swimming in our junior Olympic-sized swimming pool. And don't forget, you can shop for pagan crafts, wares, gifts, and books on Vendors Row. For more information and to register, please go to flapagan.org. We hope to see you there.
Okay, and we are back. This is Getting Familiar, and I am Lady Stars and Fire. And we have been discussing tonight, this has been the show that I've been calling the darker, creepier side of things, because I have been getting into the creepy crawlies of the animal world. Earlier we discussed the spider, and then the maggot. Ew. And now I'm going to discuss the slug. However, for whatever category we may be discussing on the show, there's never enough time to go over every animal and their aspects within a 1-hour show. So you may find that I may have shows that seem to repeat, but that would be because I'm going to be discussing additional animals, not the ones I already have discussed. Additional stories, theories, and so forth. But I couldn't do this one, my darker, creepier, crawlier side of things, without talking about the slug or the snail. Because the slug happens to be a guide that comes to me over and over again, depending on changes that I have had happen in my life. And even though they're slimy and funky, I've learned a lot from them. And they have very, very big medicine to teach us. Because the slug, or the snail, seems to come to us from a truly mystical place of protection and providence, deliberation and perseverance. Because they are the universal symbol for stability and steadfastness. Because they gently flow along the journey of life, leaving their beautiful iridescent trail of knowledge behind them. For the snail itself, the spiral on its shell is a symbol of evolution and expansion, our mystery and the never-ending changing cycles of our eternal journey of love and delight. Both the snail and the slug are communicators on many different levels. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, as well as physically. They are nocturnal creatures and share the flow of affection with the moon. And they bring that feminine energy to the principle of creation. In their most primal of form, they are viewed as of mind, body, and spirit. It was said that Native Americans or Native American shaman would allow for a banana slug to crawl around in their mouth when they would have a toothache. The slug or the snail teaches us that healing takes place with devotion and pure and unconditional love. However, they possess incredible strength and they have the ability for self-protection as well as hiding. They remind us to hold simplicity close to our heart, to view the world from pure light and shadow. And this is because of that deep connection they have with the world of spirit. In fact, the snail or the slug, is such an ancient tool used in divination, it is often considered to be sacred because its slimy trail leaves guidance of its very own decisions. It was even thought that if you put a slug inside of a flower, that its slimy trail would leave the writings, the name of a marriage partner to come. And I bet you did not know that the slug is said to be related to the Hebrew alphabet as the letter known as Yod, as well as they are both very similar within their shape, for they are shaped like the sacred seed. And within the Hebrew alphabet, Yod is considered the smallest letter of them all, but by far it has the biggest meaning of them all, for it is also considered the hand. But what Yod is most known for is the fact it signifies creation itself, as well as all of the metaphysical processes, because it does stand as a symbol of the Creator. So if the snail or the slug appears to you as a messenger, a totem, a power animal, or a guide, it may be that you are starting to open to a higher vision. A new path may be opening for you. And it is thought that on a spiritual level, this path will stimulate a greater commitment to your spiritual life. So therefore, in a form, you are setting energy into motion that proclaims that to the universe, that you are ready to start to accept these changes. And that is because with the slug's appearance, it is reminding us to both recognize and realize illumination is always present within our life, as well as within us ourselves. But with the slug or the snail also comes heightened sensitivity. And for my empaths, my sensitives out there, I mean exactly that, heightened sensitivities. I always know, for me personally, when the slug shows up again in my life, it's what I call leveling up. You know, like on a video game, when you've mastered a level and you get to move up to the next level. And when I say leveling up, I do not mean that you've become better at something, or I have, or we've mastered any kind of level that makes us greater at a situation. No, I just mean for whatever reason, spiritually, we're evolving a little bit. That's all I mean by leveling up. We become sensitive as we level up. And let's face it, it makes perfect sense when you would be leveling up that you would become more sensitive emotionally, mentally, spiritually, as well as physically. Because there is also a warning that comes with the slug or the snail. And that in part is to become aware of being too slow moving and lazy. But also because the slug can cling to anything or any kind of surface, because its slime is seen as leaving behind any debris that was no longer in service to it. This is all part of those bricks within the change of our lives. Because the slug's wisdom is teaching us how to let go, how to leave it behind, how to take out our trash. The very letting go of the wastefulness that is now harmful to us. And this can be seen in many different ways. It can be seen under emotional, mental, spiritual, as well as physical ways within our life. There are many different ways in which we have to let go of our baggage. And that heightened sensitivity reminds us how important it is to do so. We forget all too often that letting go does not mean that we have forgotten those lessons we have learned within our past. but more in the idea of making peace with our past. Because if we do not, we cannot make peace within the moment, which is now in our life. Slug is ultimately reminding us to keep our sights on our destination as to where it is our heart's desire truly is, as well as where our compassion will take us. Because we need to remember, we ourselves are individuals. So we must always understand that we are responsible for our path, for we truly are also that beholder. Okay, everybody, I am so glad that you hung out with me tonight, and I hope that you tune in next week and hang out with me some more so that we can discuss some more animal wisdom, a little bit of getting familiar with the animals and spirit. But we're out of time today. It's that time of the hour, so I've got to be going. So again, please tune in next Thursday night at 8 o'clock for Getting Familiar with me, Lady Stars and Fire. And from now until then, take care of you and use you wisely, darling. Hugs and kisses in the wind, and see you next week.